how are you? How's your summer been, and what's it like being back?
Yeah, it's brilliant. Summer was great. Had a good amount of time off, and then obviously it's starting pre-season, and then Euros. Did a lot of work during the Euros, so that was quite a busy time. And then it's been good the last few weeks to get some real work under our belts. And obviously a bit of a disappointment for last weekend being postponed, but we're looking forward to getting ahead of it this weekend.
The work you did in the Euros, what was that like? Are you enjoying that side of things?
Yeah, I love it. It's probably the next best thing to playing, being able to have, some delivering the information, I guess, working for 5 Live, and really getting a different perspective on the game from those angles. So I was very grateful for the opportunity to do it. But I prefer playing, so that's where I am for now.
And you mentioned pre-season there. Obviously, you've got Brian in now. How's he kind of fitting in, and what's his kind of style of play that he's trying to implement on you?
He's fitting in really well. I think from the minute he came in this year, it's really clear that he really understood the philosophy of the club and the morals of Everton Football Club. And I think I've said it in quite a few interviews, it's quite parallel with Frank Lampard's approach when he came in with the men's side. I think he really got it early on, what it's like to be an Evertonian. So I think he settled in perfectly. Really, can't really fault him for the way that he's adapted. I think kind of goes without saying that there was a lot of, how do I put this, things to iron out, let's say, to move us forward. And he's certainly done that. I feel like we've got a really good foundation now to build on and to push forward. And I think that can be said for the playing philosophy as well, like you asked as well. He's got a really clear idea of how he wants his team to look. And the girls are doing really well, buying into his ideas. We're working on them every single day in training. There's really clear themes that come out of every session. And it's really we've created a really nice, healthy atmosphere where we can really feel a sort of a learning culture. We've got more younger players than older players, but I've said all along that you can still learn. And I think we've got a really nice balance across the team. And it's exciting that Brian and Stephen and Chris, who are the tactical coaches, the 3 of them have been working really well to get everything across to us as players.
Back at this time last year, you obviously had a lot of new players come in last time. What does it feel like now? Because there's been a few new players, but not maybe as many in terms of where you are being ready for the season and stuff. What's the comparison?
I think last year we were a little bit overly ambitious with the goals that we set. And I think then that what came with when we weren't on track to achieve those goals, what came was frustrations. And then, it really put the team, we were in a difficult situation. But I think this year, the new players, they've got a real willingness to learn. And some of them have worked with Brian previously in Denmark along the way in their careers. And I think where we're at now is we're pretty clear with how we want to keep growing as a team, and we're not really putting any pressure on, an outcome as such or an end goal. We're very realistic as a squad as to where we're at and where we want to get to. And each day, I think, I'm certainly seeing progress each day. And I think the most important thing along the way, which perhaps we lost a little bit last year, was enjoyment.
And it's hard, isn't it? Managing ambitions, because as the game growing so quickly, and you've been for a while, it is technically still quite young in terms of a professional league, but ambitions are so quick. Clubs are so ambitious and want to do really well really quickly, and that's not always the case, is it? When you're building a squad, it takes a bit longer.
Absolutely. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And I think there's a few teams that were perhaps in the same boat as us last season that do any interview with any manager or player, around that sort of 5th, 6th, 7th area of the WSL rankings. And you go, we want to push for Champions League, with there being 3 spots available now, but possibly not next season. I don't know. We'll wait on that to see how the outcome progresses with that. But at the moment, with 3 Champions League spots available, that really increases the stakes across, the teams that think they can challenge there. But like you say, a couple of bad results on the bounce and you automatically set yourself back in that quest to do that. So I think that you need to be really realistic about where the game is and respect the professionalism of every other club as well. And know that, you're not going to walk up and just win on a Sunday or a Friday night or a Saturday, it's not going to happen. It takes, real hard work, dedication, and it sounds cringe, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. I think you've got to be ready for the whole hog and the whole season instead of just 1 or 2 games.
For sure. And just thinking about Brian's system, I know how he played in Denmark. He loves possession football. You talk about high press as well, but there's an emphasis as well on the midfield area. So how personally are you finding fitting into his system?
Yeah, it's an interesting system because I would probably say I'm an 8, or have always been an 8, sort of in between a 10 and a 6 throughout my whole career. And then in this system, there isn't necessarily a clear number 8 in the system. We've got identified 6s who are defensive-minded midfielders who can jump and add to the press when necessary. And then we've got 3 forwards, So on a personal level, I'm adapting. I'm playing a position where I perhaps didn't think I would be playing at this stage of my career. But I'm really enjoying the flexibility and what I can bring to that role. And like I said, I think that my role extends as well to giving my everything on the pitch, but also extends off the pitch to ensure that the culture and Brian's principles, I'm a sort of link, if you like, between the staff and the players to make sure that standards are high, setting the tempo in sessions, and also just making sure the culture's right off the pitch. And that's not going to affect my on the pitch work. I'm not going to drain myself, with all of that stuff, because I think when you get a culture so good that it just takes care of itself, but it takes time. And like I said, we have had to iron out a few things from last season to make sure that we're on the right path. And like I said, we've set a really good foundation. So I think everything's so far so good on a personal level as well as a collective level. But yeah, just really looking forward to seeing how well we can do this season, and I know I'll be contributing to that along the way.
So you're kind of pulling the strings on the pitch and off the pitch a little bit. I was going to ask about that position actually, because I know a lot of the time, your forwards in the league will get a lot of the spotlight on them because they're scoring goals and stuff like that. But I feel like the midfield position in the women's game has become such an important role. We're seeing so many unbelievable players in that position. It's such an important role. As you talk about the pressing style of play, I think we're seeing that much more now. And for you, as I said, you're pulling strings in the middle. Are you do you look at, other players across Europe or across other leagues? Are you is there any particular player that you've taken ideas from or your style yourself on?
Well, I think after covering so much during the Euros on 5 Live, I became very aware of not just the players in certain positions, especially in midfield, but tactically very aware as well. And I was fascinated by Sweden's press and the way that Sweden played as midfielders and forwards. That sort of hybrid role that Kosovo Asllani, for example, was playing as a midfielder, jumping in to add to the press. And they had a very fixed way of playing, Sweden, and they obviously revealed all of that in a booklet. But that was very clear to see how they work, and I think that was very interesting. I think Asllani is a player who I actually played with at Man City years ago in the WSL, and she lived for the Champions League and she lived for the big moments, and I think she showed again this tournament why she's one of the best in the world in that position as a sort of a offensive but pressing midfielder, adding to that. And that's probably where I'd see myself, especially this season, is I'd always see myself as an offensive midfielder, but doing the work is just as important. And I think that's been ingrained in me from when I was a kid, to do the work and work hard for what you want to achieve. And I'm a big believer that you create your own luck, and as much as we love being on the ball and playing possession based football, pressing's good when you get it right. No one likes running, but running to win the ball back and create moments in the offensive third are that's the best thing about football. If you ask any coach, they'd say we'd love to win the ball back off a high press and score a goal. It'd be perfect. So I think it's kind of modern day football now, and I feel like the midfield have a very in a 4-3-3, the midfield have a very integral role in that, because they kind of orchestrate things from behind. You've got like Kira Walsh, Lena Oberdorf, for example, in the Euros, who really dictated the press, but not just sort of, telling people where to go, but it's also the psychological security of the players in front of them to know that, okay, well, if they do break our press, you've got Lena Oberdorf behind us who, will mop things up. You've got Kira Walsh behind us who will mop things up in a slightly different way to what Lena Oberdorf did. She sort of read the game better. Lena Oberdorf was a bit like a machine bulldozing around in the midfield. So the two of them and Aslani, I think, they were fantastic during the Euros, and I think they're sort of modern day players, if you like, and they're really profiting from the way the game's moving forward.
You talk a lot about the culture of Everton. It's obviously a club with a whole lot of history, both on the men's and the women's side. You are captain of the club. How much do you feel that in tune with Everton and what it's about?
I feel very in tune with it. I think I feel like there's a quote which is on one of the walls at Goodison. It's something, you have to look it up, but it's something like, once Everton's touched you, you'll never feel the same way again. Nothing will be the same again. Got some help there from Joanne. But yeah, I feel like it's like a language here, and it's different. And I think some people get it and some don't. And I think that's why you find, if you ask, we actually had a really fantastic day on Saturday. We had a poet who came in and delivered some poetry to us that had been written about us as a team. And he does poetry for the men's team, as in he's part of the Everton fan base. So he sits in the stands at Goodison every week, and he understands what it's like to be an Everton fan. And obviously, it's an undulating road, but he really gets it. And for him to deliver those messages to us, it was more of a concept to let everybody who's new at the club understand what it feels like to be an Everton fan. And I thought that was really kind of good for the girls to understand as general, because I feel like I get it. There's a couple of others who get it, but some are new to this club and new to this culture. But I just feel like, because Brian got it very instantly when he came in, he was then able to recruit according to what he thinks might, work. And hats off to him. From what I can see so far, he's got every single sign spot on in terms of mentally who they are as people before players. And then obviously they've backed it up with, I've seen some fantastic, players out there on the training pitch who are quite young as well. So for them to know that they can develop here and move on with their career here, it's really exciting to see. But yeah, I feel like I get it, and I'm able to, deliver that to the girls. And it's pretty simple, it's hard work, it's dedication, and it's grit, and also a bit of class on the side. So I think we've got that, and I think as a team we'll really start to show that throughout the season.
You touched on it there, the fans and the supporters group. You have Everton supporters group now as well. I think we're seeing a lot more of them grow in the women's game, which is amazing. What have they been like for you while you've been at the club?
They've been super, like we got to remember we went to an FA Cup final in 2020 and it was an empty Wembley Stadium, which was really sad. But I remember writing a tweet after the game, after losing in extra time, which was obviously devastating, but I felt really proud at the same time. And we got on the bus to leave Wembley, and we knew that as a team we'd literally emptied our tanks. And I think that's all that you can ask. And we came about the width of a post away from winning that match and winning the trophy, the FA Cup. Valerie Govan had a header and it went literally just wide of the post. So if that had gone in, it would have been 2-1 to us, and I would have backed it to finish that way. But it was heartbreaking as it was. I felt so much support from Evertonians, and we'd had messages coming in, we'd had video messages, we'd had a talk before the game from ex-Everton players, and I could really feel the warmth of the support. And obviously last season, we had a very difficult season in terms of performance-wise. I think we really didn't gel together on the pitch, and it became a little bit random in games whether we were going to get a result or not. There was never any certainty to our style. But the fans stayed with us all the way through that. And I actually said to Joe on our final home game of the season last year, can we make sure that we get a collected photo with the fans? As we signed off that season at home against Spurs. And some of the girls were a bit like, what are we doing? And I said, no, we need a picture with the fans because they've been through here for us through thick and thin this season. And you don't forget. I mean, women's football is much cheaper than men's football to go and watch, and it's much more accessible. But people are still spending their money and their time to come support us, and we want to make sure that they feel valued. And hopefully, this season we can make them feel valued by the performances on the pitch rather than photographs. But we know they're there and they're fantastic, and I believe the supporters group is growing, so they're a big part of what we do. And going to be really exciting for the new girls to meet the fans eventually when we get to our first home game.
Perfect. And obviously we're talking a lot about this in the aftermath of the Lionesses winning the Euros, but you wrote that open letter on the Everton website as well about kind of what you would how we seize this moment and how we build on it. What would you like to see put in place?
Well, I think that I keep blowing our own trumpet here at Everton, but we did an open training session at Goodison Park, and that was just genius from my end in terms of like what I thought of it and how the day was run and how it went and the impact it had on our fans and us as players as well. I think that accessibility is what separates the men's and women's game. And we've said that all along, and I think as cliche as it is, we as players have to take huge responsibility on the pitch to entertain. Now, like I said, we don't go out there to entertain the fans, we go out to entertain ourselves, and then hopefully the fans profit from that as well. But I think that's a really big factor in it. People have been striving for increased funding, exposure in every area of the game: media, sports science, nutrition, psychology, all the aspects of a professional athlete that they need to function day to day. All of those things are in place now across most of the WSL clubs. Now, there will be deficits here and there, but generally on the board, we are proper good professionals. Now, what I say to that is to everybody around the league, we actually need to really use the resources that we've got to increase our performance levels and put on even better performances. And I thought it was so evident to see in the summer with the Lionesses. There was just, as much as it was fantastic they won the tournament, the performance levels that they hit, like they've never been hit before. And that's really raised the bar for the national team. Now, I just hope that has a positive impact on the league, that the bar's raised in the WSL. More exciting games, tighter title races. I couldn't get much tighter than last year, but that third Champions League spot, the relegation, everything about it just needs to be entertaining. And I think the open training sessions, they're very important. I'm not saying doing them all the time, but I think fans need to see what we do and then come and watch us on a weekend and then come again. And I also think there needs to be bigger and greater exposure to the Women's Championship as well. I think there needs to be more coverage. I know that the FA Player does show some games, selected games on that, but I think we need to cover that more because that is the step up and that's what gives the WSL longevity and fight. And I think that's the next step for me, is more exposure on that as well.